welcome to another edition of Words of Wisdom, Gyan Ganga on our Virat Hindustan Sangam channel. Today we have a special guest, Mr. Rajiv Malhotra of the Infinity Foundation, who, along with Dr. Swamy, will be discussing interesting topic, especially on regarding the history textbook for students in India for our schools and colleges. I will briefly tell our viewers, although he doesn't require an introduction, about Rajiv Malhotra. Rajiv Malhotra is Indian-born American who is settled in the US and has this Infinity Foundation. He has been in the telecom sector, but at the age of 44, he gave up the telecom industry and started working on a project which is very close to his heart, that is issues concerning India. He has been author of numerous books. I would just like to mention a few. Some of the books are Breaking India, Being Different, The Battle for Sanskrit, Indra's Net, Academic Hindu Phobia, just to name a few. Rajiv Malhotra ji is a world-renowned researcher, author, speaker, and thinker, and has, I would say, started a lot of debate on many of these issues. In fact, we at Virat Hindustan Sangam are very proud that Rajiv Malhotra ji and Dr. Subramanian Swamy views match on most of these issues, and they have been working together for last many years. And it's a proud moment for Virat Hindustan Sangam to have these two intellectual giants together on a program like this. So I would request Dr. Swamy to start the program, introduce the topic, and have this discussion with Mr. Rajiv Malhotra. I thank Ramesh Swamy and Arvind Chaturvedi and the team of Brian and Ashish Shetty and Tejas for their technical support. Thank you. Dr. Swamy.
Thank you very much, and welcome to Rajiv Malhotra, even if it's on electronically. You're a famous man in India, and a lot of people are watching you today. The main topic that we are going to discuss amongst ourselves for the benefit of the general audience is on the question of textbooks. And as you know that the identity question had been earlier made a big issue in the United States by Samuel Huntington. And since then, this has been applied in India also. What is the identity? We know what our republic is all about, but the history of India, there are many things which science has now contradicted. Aryan-Dravidian theory has been contradicted by the DNA studies on genetics. Saraswati River being a mythical river has been contradicted. Ram Setu has been a myth or a mythical thing, as the Congress Party's affidavit against my petition was filed and I will withdrawn. That also is now exploded. So much of the awareness began with your book on Breaking India. And I had hoped that in our first term as BJP government, we would be able to form a committee which would prepare a textbook. Because what we really need is a school textbook and a college textbook. And that would be required reading, because at the moment, you still continue to have textbooks which are being written by Ramila Thapar and the like. And they are still just circulating the same old things. So I would begin by asking you the question that when we think of the true history of India, the defalsification of our history, what do you think are the principal topics that should find to the two textbooks, one for school and one for college?
Well, first of all, I'm delighted to be on this show with Dr. Swamy. So thank you to VHS for inviting me. I consider Dr. Swamy to be a treasure and a national asset, unparalleled in his intellect and his dedication and wit and commitment. I am really indebted to him for many, many years and decades of friendship. So every time I get a chance to collaborate and be with him, it's a real honor. So with that opening, yes, I think this topic is a very important topic. To just position my involvement in it, I've always been impressed, having spent about 50 years in the United States, how well uh, every child in school is taught about the founding fathers, about the idea of American exceptionalism. The grand narrative of what it means to be an American is very well ingrained. You could be a Republican, Democrat, whatever, but you believe in certain principles of the country and its history. And in my corporate career, when I used to travel, I found that the Japanese are very clear on what it means to be a Japanese. The Chinese are very clear on what it means to be a Chinese. The British have a sense of their grandeur and their history and their royal family and English language and whatnot. And the French don't want to be confused as British. They want to be very clear that they are separate. So, this distinctiveness is found among all the great countries that are being very successful. And yet, over the years, I found that when such issues were raised, whether it's the Indian diplomat, whether it's the Indian corporate person, they would try to change the topic. They would find it a little embarrassing. Either they are ignorant or they have some kind of inferiority complex. So this bothered me. And then finally, I discovered Joseph Needham. Joseph Needham in Cambridge wrote a multi-volume on the history of Chinese science and technology. And this was the Joseph Needham Institute at Cambridge is still active and they're still publishing. But during his life, many volumes were produced. This actually changed the self-image of China and their international brand, because the Needham volumes became required reading in all the centers. Anyone who wanted to study China would know about the Needham volume. So in order to start a similar project, my foundation started History of Indian Science and Technology, which is a part of Indian history. The science and technology is part of our history. Everything from the Harappan technologies to metallurgy to medicine to civil engineering, shipbuilding, cotton, whatever. So we have produced 14 volumes as of now. These 14 volumes are in print. They are available. We got no support from anyone. I mean, we have talked to every kind of minister, we talked to all sorts of technocrats, and they all say great things, but nobody came out with actual tangible support. So on our own, we produced these. Each volume took 3 years of research. All the research was done by prominent Indian scholars from IIT Kanpur, from BHU, various places. And each volume went through a due diligence and a peer review by independent people who also got compensated just for spending many months doing a detailed peer review. So by the time each book comes out, it's very solid. Now, I thought that something like this ought to be done on a broader scale, not just for history of science, but on a broader scale. So this is what I have called the Grand Narrative of India project, that what we should know, what is our grand narrative. This includes history as a very central part. It also includes philosophy. It also includes social sciences. Now, one thing I want people to know is that probably the most toxic and colonized discipline in the humanities concerning India is actually sociology, because they've taken social categories that were developed in the West in the 1800s, on how you study a society, what's the definition of a community, a family, an individual, what are the problems, what constitutes human rights, and all that. And that lens has become so pakka in the Indian system that even those who talk the language of decolonizing are actually, they are full of this social sciences of the West. So decolonizing, history, philosophy, social sciences, political science, history of Indian science, all of this is part of this project. One of the areas I'm working on is Indian contributions to the mind sciences. In neuroscience, cognitive science, psychology, the modern current thinking in the West is so much based on Patanjali, on Buddhist thought, yogis. I've just finished a series of interviews in Harvard and Massachusetts General Hospital, 9 interviews with experts, which we are going to produce, and discussing how they are using Indian thought to do the cutting edge research on microbiomes, on genetics, on all kind of things. So the history of India encompasses so many domains. It's not only war and kings and invaders. It's also the history of Indian knowledge and Indian social knowledge, Indian thought. Arthashastra is part of Indian grand narrative. And certainly a lot of science and technology are part of Indian grand narrative. And also I want to mention in this regard that the history of India has to include the Indian influences on other countries. That's also part of Indian history. The Indian influence on China, on Japan, which they acknowledge actually.
Yes.
It's part of their textbooks. The Indian influences on the Middle East, and Middle East as intermediaries taking some of this knowledge to Europe, and the Indian influences on Europe, Indian influences on American thought in the late 1800s through Emerson and Thoreau and Whitman and many others, all the way to T.S. Eliot and so forth. So the history of Indian contributions to the world is also an important part of Indian history. So what I've just laid out is a very large project. It's a very important project. I've devoted my whole adult life to doing this. And this is where I feel that the potential is huge in terms of creating an Indian identity, an Indian sense of unity, who we are. That's my passion, and I'm very happy that you have always showed great interest in it.
Well, it's an incomplete promise of mine, and I'm not given up, and I'm in fact quite optimistic from what I've been able to do in the last few years, that indeed we could get down to the brass tacks of rectifying or defalsification of our history. What would you say should be the focus of textbook, required textbook for this schools and colleges? I mean, would you say identity is an important thing for being taught at an early stage? Whether we are Aryans and Dravidians or not, the importance of Sanskrit, whether we should really make it a link language or a language for discourse when the Mimamsa logic for courts and so on. So there's so much to be done. But in terms of preparing a person who feels proud to be an Indian and can identify what it means to be an Indian, what do you think are the topics that ought to be included in a revised history text for both school and colleges?
Well, first of all, we should not dismiss itihas as myth. We have to start from the Puranas and the itihas, and we have to match it with the archaeology. There's nothing shameful to say there is a field called, we should call it Vedic archaeology. After all, there is a field called biblical archaeology.
Yes.
You go to the American Academy of Religion, you go to the archaeological conferences and very respectable panels on biblical archaeology, where they are using biblical texts as a guide to understand and interpret various artifacts which they discover. There's nothing wrong in using Vedic art and symbolism and stories of our tradition to interpret and understand various archaeological findings. So this should be given respect. And this should be part of a Vedic archaeology, should be a kind of a topic that our people are made interesting, because it's very tactile, it's very visual, it's very, you can have school trips to places. So you can make people find it fun and interesting to look at these kind of, it's not very abstract and theoretical, it's very tangible. I would say that the entire history of political kingdoms is not only about some foreign people coming into the north and doing some stuff, but there are so many empires in India. There are so many empires in the south. There are so many empires in the East India. There is Punjab Ranjit Singh Empire. There is the Marathas. every one of those is a grand history. I mean, and it's shocking that they are taught very little, and the focus is on Mughals and things of that sort. I mean, Mughals deserve a chapter also, but it should be just one part of it, and it should be balanced with what good they did and what bad they did. So then I think this whole idea of society, the whole misunderstanding of the Varnashram system, we have to correct. The whole idea of what is the gunas, what is the qualities of individuals, qualities of Rashtra. The whole theory of Rashtra has to be taught. It is not the same as it's easy. We often translate it as nation, but actually the Rashtra as defined in the Vedas is its own concept. So the categories as described in Sanskrit, the categories of who is the individual, what is the community, what is the nation, what is the cosmos, what is our relationship with plants and animals, what is with nature. In fact, I would say that this coronavirus is actually nature fighting back. And it is a karmic response to the collective karma of humanity, because humanity has ill-treated animals, ill-treated nature, polluted a lot. So we have to use these as lessons to teach about our values, our Vedic values. What do we have to say about all this? We should teach a little bit about, of course, a lot about yoga, meditation, but we should also encourage Ayurveda. So the Indian knowledge systems is a very vast subject. Now, the question is, what do we do with this knowledge? So first is research, so that it is absolutely impeccable. The foundation is so solid that it's not something that a person can refute. It should not have quackery. It should all be properly reviewed. But then I see several products, if you will, coming out of it. For the schools and for the colleges, the textbook nowadays is not just a printed work, but also multimedia. It's got e-learning, so people are learning online. They're learning through videos. So the multimedia online learning methodologies should be utilized in bringing this knowledge out. There has to be teacher training, because India has a few lakh teachers and they're not properly trained. So a whole curriculum to train, retrain, re-educate, lakhs of teachers in schools has to be part of this program. You cannot just have a book out there without doing this. This knowledge should be also turned into curriculum for IAS officers, Indian Foreign Service officers, police officers, judiciary. There should be specialized ways of teaching them, specialized modules to teach corporate India. Right now, what you are finding is the corporate people are funding our opponents. I mean, there is the famous Murthy Foundation funding Sheldon Pollock. Yes. And Ambani's are funding a person who calls himself India's leading mythologist, and according to him, all of this itihas and everything is mythology. So Ambani is funding this. So there is money available, but this money is being sort of gone in the wrong places. Now, some gurus, I mean, prominent guru in South India, one of the famous ones, basically supports the Aryan-Dravidian divide. And he gives talks about this Aryan invasion theory. So, even the gurus, while they are brilliant and wonderful in their domain of knowledge, need not be expert. They aren't necessarily experts in everything else, and they should be having the willingness to learn. Media needs to be re-educated. Indian journalists and media, the journalism schools need to be introducing these kind of courses on the Indian narrative. And then, lot of young people are fond of, they get their knowledge through games. There is a gaming industry, computer gaming industry, online gaming industry. The young people are into that. And gaming industry has themes, has values, has metaphors, has images, has icons. And those need to be Indianized rather than this westernized Disney kind of thing. They need to Indianize these and bring out gaming through gaming. And then what I would propose is every one of the 700 districts should have a multimedia theater like an IMAX or a 360-degree, one of those theaters, and make video film on the Indian grand narrative available free of charge in every village. Every district at least should have it, so that the next generation is raised with a different consciousness. But finally, I want to say, to take this message of India internationally, ICCR has to do a better job.
Yeah.
ICCR has not done its job. When Lokesh Chandra was the head, we gave a proposal on how we can play a role We didn't even want much money. We just wanted their moral support and their backing. And then when he left and Sahasra Buddhaji came, I had several meetings with him also. The point is, things never went beyond just a meeting. And so ICCR has not done its job in putting the Indian story on the world map. And it should not be a private individual like me spending all whatever I got for all these decades. By now, the ICCR should have said, okay, let's back this guy. So none of these things have happened. And I mean, I could tell you a lot about what all I've tried, if you're interested, what all I've tried in the government, all the kind of places that hasn't produced results.
Yeah. Well, that leads me to this question, that you are not just a scholar like other scholars, but you have a vast experience in running organizations. So this project would obviously need a scholar who also can organize.
Yes.
So if we were trying to seduce you to come to India and not leave India till you write these textbooks,
Yes.
or organize the writing of these textbooks, what is the kind of framework you would like, where you think that you can produce the results without difficulty?
Good, very good question. So I'll answer two parts. First, the second part, I'll come to the practicalities of how to achieve all this. The
Yes.
first part I want to say is what all I have already tried, so we don't try the same things that haven't worked. So I have gone to the PMO and gotten verbal support. In fact, Modi said to his person, arrange a PowerPoint presentation. Rajiv should propose all this, 2-3 hours to all these ministers, and they invited different people. I have gone to the HRD minister so many times. Nothing concrete has come up. Minister of Culture, Science and Technology, External Affairs. I've presented at the Indian Foreign Service Academy. In the IAS Missouri, I've done. I've presented to top RSS leaders. They're wonderful people. I get along with them, but nothing concrete, no action has come out. ICSSR, Indian Council of Social Science Research. In fact, when I told them, here are proposals on how to deconstruct the colonized view of society in India and how to replace it, they said that we cannot accept your proposal unless you comply with our idea of social sciences. And that idea of social sciences is the colonized idea. So I'm supposed to propose a methodology which fits Western sociology, even though my purpose is to refute it. But I have to apply a method which is consistent with Western sociology, because ICSSR are so kind of so immersed in this way of thinking, very pedantic. They don't have the knowledge, they don't have the courage to come out and say, okay, let's get done with all that and let's replace it with some new methodology. So I have had a lack of success in getting the government, let's just say the government side, interested. Now, it could well be that they like to close ranks because I'm an outsider. I mean, I'm not a Shakha product. So what do I do at this age? I cannot become a Shakha product. Maybe they should recognize that some people with an outside perspective bring some value, and rather than feeling sort of threatened by it. Often I see the attitude is, let's take Rajiv's idea, let's have him write all these proposals, and then we'll give it to one of our own people and he'll do it. But so far they haven't been able to do anything. Yeah. So this idea that we'll take your ideas, but we will reject you, it's like saying, Dr. Swamy, you give us all the theories and all these ideas, and we'll hand it over to some fellow, and he will carry it out, and we will put you aside. It doesn't work. I mean, not only is it unfair, not only is it lack of meritocracy, but those people are not, if they don't have the tapasya and the IQ and the ability and the creativity to come up with these ideas, they don't have the wherewithal to implement them. So this is the problem with trying to create a government organization within the government to try and do this. My thinking is that to have a movement which is sustainable, so that we produce these things, we create many variations of it for IAS and IFS and media and corporates. We put it in multimedia. We do teacher training. This is an ongoing project. This is what the Culture Ministry should be doing full time. The Culture Ministry's full-time job should be to produce this grand narrative multimedia material for Indians. my feeling is that maybe somebody in the corporate sector has to come forth and say, okay, I'll sponsor it. And if such a thing were available, my plan would be, I do not want a physical institution, brick and mortar institution. We do not need real estate. We do not need buildings. In this day and age, the brightest people are sitting in different parts of India. They are sitting at home, like right nowadays. And so we hire the best people wherever they are, and we have a virtual organization. We do not need a physical organization, maybe a small office for paperwork, but the talent is spread out. And we would like corporate style project management, which I'm very used to, where people are engaged based on merit. They are held responsible. There are milestones, there are deliverables, there are quality controls, there is periodic reporting. So it should be run just like a corporate project. And I would want the freedom to choose my team. I don't want to control money. I would prefer not to have any money in my control. They can, but I would like to specify who are the people to hire, what is their job description, what all they'll produce at various points in time, and then however they are to be paid, somebody has to pay them. And I'll manage the work. I would rather manage the work and the people and the administrative paperwork and all that according to whatever the laws are. If somebody else can do it, I'll be grateful for that. So this is the way a very professional group has to be put. It has to do this. It cannot be done within say IGNCA's people. They just don't have the quality, or some ICSSR people, or it cannot be done within the scope of one of those government bodies, because they just don't have they can do melas, they can organize literary festivals, melas, conclaves, big events, a lot of public relations announcements or things like that, very emotional, but they have no track record of actually producing output. So to be results oriented, this thing has to be sort of left alone, given the support it needs, and then held accountable to produce output. That's the way I thrive.
Yeah. Well, I got your big picture on this, and I tell you one thing. I've been here for a long time in India, in the sense that I just broke all my connections with the academic world and stayed here. Sometimes in India, nothing happens for a long time, and then suddenly everything happens. So I'll give you hope that the perspective that you've just given me, we can expect that this perspective will be implemented, and the infrastructure for it to be set up so that we can complete this project, because we have to do it. The foreigners who came to this country and occupied this country, they did a systematic job, and we have to approve that. And I think I can't think of a better person who's multidimensional in outlook than you, and therefore how to make you happy and be ready to come and finish this project, instead of thinking that all this running around and meeting people shouldn't take place. Right now, I have one question, because a lot of young people, are watching this in thousands, and you're their hero. So if they were to say, what we see about India is all division, 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 where is that Supra concept of an Indian? And what does that mean? What would you say?
I would say that if you look at India deeper beneath the surface of this modern Indological westernized India, you'd have to look at the sacred geography. The sacred geography is a very important topic of India also. It's not just the history, but the geography on which the history happens. That's the theater in which the performance is happening. So the theater is the sacred geography of India, which is very, very special, which is a unifying force. That is why there were these pilgrims and these yatras and so on. If we look at that, and there's a common thread in the Indian narrative, the common thread of how society is in equilibrium, how there are challenges, there may be temporary disequilibrium, then there's another equilibrium. So the ability of Indian society to kind of keep recalibrating itself and advancing, this is a very wonderful story. And this wonderful story, we've captured it in our itihas. We've stopped writing itihas. somehow there needs to be an itihas for the past 2000 years also. We have to, that is what we are talking about actually today. We have to construct it in the Indian style of writing about the past in a way that has all the aesthetics, the drama. So I would say that Indian values, Indian philosophy, Indian social constructs, healing sciences, mind sciences, sacred geography, these have to be put together and presented to the youth as a very solid alternative to this fashion of chasing Americanism. I mean, I think Americans are good people, have a lot of great contributions. For the United States, they've done very well. But I think you cannot transplant that and Americanize the whole India. That would be a mistake. So Americans have to stay American, and it's good for them, and Indians have to learn who we are. So that take the true spirit of Bharatiyata, that has to be brought into the Indian ethos. This requires getting rid of the inferiority complex that, unless I can talk, wear clothes like these American guys and become obscene and vulgar like them and curse like them and wear some cowboy hat from Texas, unless I can do all that, I'm not really properly modern. This is the disease that the Indian youth have acquired. And I think we got to get rid of it.
Yeah. One short question before we conclude. In one of the divisive factors has been this Varna and Jati. I leave Jati for a
He'll come back. It's just some distortion.
Okay.
We'll have to wait for Dr. Swamy to be back. Yeah.
Viewers, please bear with us. There's some technical hitches.
He's going to be back. He's going to be back.
So therefore, would you say that this should be the demolition of the present decade Varna system should be a part of our campaign?
The thing is this, how the Varna got turned into the British caste system with Lord Risley is, of course, a well-known story now. Even the Marxists and leftists acknowledge that this is what was done. And then the mistake made was the Nehruvian constitution turned it into official vote banks, and now we are paying the price. So rather than a meritocracy where an individual should be judged on their needs, we now have group collective bargaining. And so if I want to be a leader, I find a group and tell them they've been abused. They've been abused by other Indians. I'm the hero. I will save them. I'll get a better quota. So if I can champion a small number of people, they follow me, and I tell them you'll get some quotas and this and that, and I'm able to produce some results because I create a lot of gadar, and we have violence and we have riots, and so the establishment says, okay, it's enough of a nuisance. Let's give him something, and the moment they give me something, it empowers me to ask for even more. This is the kind of nonsense that Varna kind of disintegrated into caste disintegrated into vote banks, and people are all accusing Hinduism for this menace which has nothing to do with Hinduism. So it has become a very abusive system. It would take an act of tremendous courage to say that the affirmative action and quotas should be based on individual need. So if a person, when you apply to the US colleges, they send you a form if you want financial aid. And in the financial aid, there's no question on your religion or anything. They ask you your income, your parents' income. It's a financial need. If you have a financial need, based on that, they rank you on a scale. And the ones who have more need get preference over those who have less need. Now, we have the Aadhaar card. We have the online computerized, digitized taxation. We know people's income. I think there should be a way to take all of this data on the economics of different households and different individuals and come up with a completely alternative way such that each individual can be codified in terms of need. Somebody could have a need because of physical handicap, somebody could be financial, somebody could be that where they're living is not developed, they don't have schools. So they could have a score and come up with a kind of a ranking of needs. And if India could change the allocation of money and resources based on genuine need rather than caste identity, it would actually solve a lot of problems. But
Thank you
whether
very
it's possible, I mean, this would require a huge, courageous group of people to change these laws.
Yes. Thank you very much, Rajiv ji. I hope to see you next week
Yes.
on the economic issues. Over to Jagdish.
Yes. Thank you very much, Swamy, Dr. Swamy. So Jagdish, next time I would like to ask Dr. Swamy some questions, because he's, in my eyes, he's the economic expert. And so I want to talk about, the Indian economy and what's happening, what are the problems, what are his ideas, because a lot of people enjoy the conversations that he and I have had in the past, and it's about time we should have another one.
Yeah, thank you, Rajiv ji.
Go on.
Sorry, Dr. Swamy, you were saying something.
No, yeah, it's all yours. The field is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Swamy, and thank you, Rajiv ji, for that interesting conversation on the need for a history textbook in schools and colleges in India. So it was a good insight in what is required, because the younger generation, especially in India, are looking forward to such a book. I just want to remind our viewers that today's program was also live on Rajiv Malhotra's official Facebook page and YouTube page. So besides our Virat Hindustan Sangam channels of YouTube, Facebook Live, and Instagram, it was also available on Rajiv Malhotra, YouTube, and Facebook Live. And with this, we are coming to the end of another interesting episode. But I wish to remind our viewers that we will be available every day at 8 p.m. Again, as Rajiv ji and Dr. Swamy discussed, on next Wednesday, that is the 29th of April, Rajiv Malhotra ji will be again available for this discussion with Dr. Swamy. So do watch out for our coming days, and especially the special episode on the 29th of April, Wednesday at 8 p.m. Indian time. So looking forward to your...
On the economy.
The topic will be on the economy in India and the effect of the coronavirus and other related factors. So that will be an interesting session. So do keep in tune. So with this, I thank our team of Ramesh Swamy, Arvind Chaturvedi, Ashish Shetty, Brian, who has been supportive from Rajiv Malhotra's side, and also Tejas and other friends for their background support for the success of this project of Words of Wisdom, Gyan Ganga of Virat Hindustan Sangam. Dhanyavad. Thank you and Jai Hind.
Namaste.